There's a beef emerging between the Koch brothers and the Republican National Committee that's turning into what one Republican operative described as, quote, all-out war. Detailed an amazing report today from Yahoo News. And it all comes down to what is arguably the single most valuable commodity in contemporary electoral politics, voter data. Not only talking about who the voters are, but where they are, what they like to do, how often they have voted, and how they like to vote. The RNC reached a deal last year to share its voter information with the Koch brothers. And in a press release, the agreement was called, quote, a historic data sharing partnership. But according to that report from John Ward in Yahoo News today, after the fall midterm elections, the deal was allowed to expire without being renewed. The RNC and the Koch brothers are now battling over who gets control of that data. And although both organizations have their own data mining operations, Yahoo News is reporting the Koch's i360 platform for managing voter contacts, which is viewed by many as a superior, easier-to-use interface than what's on offer from the RNC, is becoming increasingly popular among Republican campaigns. I think it's very dangerous and wrong, said RNC Chief of Staff Katie Walsh, to allow a group of very strong, well-financed individuals who have no accountability to anyone to have control over who gets access to the data, when, why, and how. We reached out to the Koch brothers for comment, but have yet to get a response. Now, in this post-Citizens United era, in which super PACs have changed the game, what the heck, one has to ask, is the point of even having a Republican National Committee when you've got the Koch brothers in their database? Joining me now, John Ward, senior political correspondent for Yahoo News, who wrote that piece we were just talking about, Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter for The Guardian, and Michael Tomasky, special correspondent for The Daily Beast. John, let me start with you. It was a great piece, and it reveals something profound about the modern campaign architecture post-Citizens United. Two things. One is, why do we have parties anymore? And two, the absolute importance of voter data. Let's start with the voter data, why it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, there are two things that parties or campaigns or state parties need data for: targeting and turnout, and persuasion. That's basically it. You want to find out who you need to get to the polls, and the people that you're not sure if they're going to vote for you, you're going to try to persuade them. Republicans have traditionally been very good at turnout. Democrats have gained an edge over the last several years in persuasion. Those are the kind of two main things that data is used for.
When I was doing very little bit of field organizing back in 2004, and when I've been around it, even just a decade ago, that data, that voter file, was kind of the cornerstone of what a local party was. Like when you talked about what a local Democratic Party in some county was, it was like they had the voter file, basically.
Yeah.
What is a political party, Mike, without a voter file?
It's nothing much without a voter file, and this is what national committees do now. They maintain and update voter files, and they raise money. Those are really their only two jobs. Reince Priebus has always kind of been a little bit surprising to me in the ways that he has jumped into policy and even philosophical debates sometimes when he has done that, particularly with his autopsy after the election. Party chairs don't do that kind of thing.
Right.
They raise money and maintain the voter file. That's all they're supposed to do, period.
But we now live in an era in which they have to raise hard money, right? They have caps on donations, and they have to disclose their donors. And they might have an inferior voter file product, as John's reporting suggests. And so the question becomes, at what point, are they essentially surpassed in importance? And is that going to happen in this cycle, particularly on the Republican side?
I don't think it's going to happen in this cycle. I think there's the difference between the short term and the long term. And I think that, at least for now, one thing that's clear, though, is that a lot of Republican candidates and certainly Republican leadership in Congress, they don't want to pick an open battle with the Koch brothers. They're so heavily reliant on the Koch brothers when it comes to donations. So this is the RNC right now looking at the longer term where they feel like they're losing influence anyway with the rise of super PACs.
I love that quote I love the quote from the chief of staff being like, these people are accountable to no one. Exactly. We can't just let them have all this power. It's yes, thank you. Yes. That's what we've been saying.
Yeah. At least for now, though, the RNC has a binding commitment, though. They can't turn away anyone who has an R attached to their name when it comes to accessing these files, whereas the Koch brothers could down the road decide.
They can, but they're more constrained.
Right.
More constrained.
But that's what makes this so fascinating, right? Because you can imagine a future trajectory. Remember, at least one of the Koch brothers gets to start in Libertarian Party politics, right? There was an alternate party, and then he sort of turned away from that because sort of thought that was a dead end. But you can imagine the Kochs essentially, they have the resources to do it. They've hired a lot of very smart people. You can imagine, John, that they build something that really does start to look like essentially a parallel party.
Yeah, and I would just distinguish between the quality of data and the quality of tools. obviously this is like a mind-numbing topic, but
please
in some ways,
continue.
But,
At length.
but I think the RNC's data is good. It's fine. It's just these tools that people use for voter contact. I360, the Koch brothers organization, has gotten a leg up on that. And as far as, trying to take the place of the party, I was quite frankly stunned at the frankness that the RNC had in these comments, especially the one on the record by the RNC chief of staff. I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It's sort of like they're trying to put us out of business.
Yeah, and the other one that was a blind quote by an anonymous source was somebody.
Well, the Kochs are going to spend $900 million, almost $1 billion. Is the RNC going to raise that much money? They're not going to raise anywhere
That's how much
close
money was
to
spent
that
all
much.
last cycle.
No
That's how much
way.
was spending all last cycle. But also,
Yes,
remember, we're dealing with completely apples and oranges in terms of the legal regimes guiding that fundraising, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Now, RNC's got to raise this in, what, $32,000 chunks or whatever the hard limit is
raise it
now.
however they want
It's very
and
hard. The
whatever
Koch
they
brothers
want.
can literally go. Yes.
Exactly.
And that's how they've raised it. Like, done. Now we are done raising it.
But I think the RNC is pivoting now to a different argument than they've been making, because they've been, I think, concerned about this for at least 2 to 3 years. But for the first time, they're acknowledging that they've gotten behind on some things and that they've made some mistakes, and they're making the philosophical argument, which is definitely their strongest ground to fight from.
I want to talk about also the sort of developments in the Jeb Bush campaign this week. I think, look, I remember, we were talking in the editorial meeting this morning, I said, I remember articles being written in November of 2007 about how Barack Obama was dead in the water in Iowa and what a disaster and he was never going to win and what the heck. So, like, obviously this doesn't mean anything for the future. But in terms of what it means now, it was an acknowledgement of what seemed to be pretty obvious, which is the Jeb Bush campaign has not gone very well at all.
No.
Barack Obama was a pretty bad candidate in the summer of 2007, as Jeb Bush has been a bad candidate this summer. But bad candidates can be bad in different ways. Barack Obama was a rookie. He made some rookie errors. But I don't think there was any question that he was hungry for the job. Now, Jeb Bush's problems are different problems. He's really rusty, and he seems very ambivalent about this whole thing.
And
maybe
that is so true. I am always amazed.
What's he doing?
I am always amazed by watching the clips of him, the sound that comes in. I almost, in a weird way, kind of find it weirdly appealing, because it's like, is this thing? Are you actually campaigning, or are you just chilling?
Well, look, I think there were 3 main miscalculations on the Bush campaign and waiting's part. One was simply that they projected that he would fundraise at these record levels, and he's now poised to fall well short of that. They also thought that putting out this fast, hard fundraising threat would scare away some of the other candidates like Marco Rubio. And on that same point, they've underestimated some of the desire for a fresh face, for a younger face. You needn't look further than Scott Walker and Rubio as that example. And thirdly, he just simply hasn't performed well on the stump. He's sticking to the middle ground. He's trying to play a longer game. He's not pandering, but he's struggling to articulate why it is that they should trust him on education or on immigration or some of these issues that the base is angry about.
The point you made to me is the key one, and it hooks back to the Kochs, which is that the supply of funds has expanded so much. You can't scare someone out of the race by fundraising.
Marco Rubio has a billionaire backing his entire campaign. So.
All right, John Ward, Sabrina Savadiki, and Michael Tomasky, thank you all for joining us. That is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Chris. Thanks, Fred.
You bet.
And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Bear with me here for a second. There is an important